Hello, my name is Lawyer Daniel, and I want to share with you uh, a bibliographic history of the journey of my education up to today. This starts way back in 1992 in the liberated areas of the then Southern Sudan. That was my first day in the classroom. It was in April 1992 in a place called the Kejiko, deep in the bushes of Yei region by then. Uh, Actually, my first day in the classroom wasn't quite a good experience. I was still young by then, but the actual classrooms that we had in the liberated areas were not buildings, they were huge trees. Our classrooms were trees, mango trees. We had no textbooks. We were writing on the ground. Uh, our teachers by then would help us push our fingers on how to write letter A, B, C, or D on the soil. And even our examinations, we would write them on the soil and the teachers would mark. So in 1992, I finished my first elementary class. That's probably nursery. Then again, I had to be promoted to primary one. In 1993, I joined primary one, and our classroom was kind of gorgeous. Although we were studying largely under trees, we were determined to carry on with the education policy in the liberated areas. The SPLM regional government was not having the capacity to build classrooms for all the rural populations in the liberated areas. But even access, like roads, educational materials like textbooks, were rare. So we started writing on the soil until I joined primary four. So all our classrooms by then were under trees. So when I joined primary three, that was in 1994, we were conscripted. Some of us who were energetic enough and were able to carry guns were taken into the military. And those who could not carry the gun were left. From that time, our school was closed for about 2 or 3 months, for 3 months. So in August of 1994, we resumed with our classes and finished the year. But then the classes were only four. That's elementary, primary 1, 2, 3, and 4. So in 1995, again, the soldiers conscripted some of our students and the teachers from the school. So in that time, the school was closed completely. So we spent the whole of 1995 at home. And in 1996, I joined Clarima Primary School deep in the villages. The school was very far, in a distance of about 3 miles from where I stay, from Kejiko Center. So I had to walk every morning from Kejiko up to Clarima. I started primary 3 in Clarima. Again, because we were cut short with the conscriptions that took place in 1995 and the closure of Kejiko Primary School, we shifted to Clarima in 1996. I joined primary 3 and continued there until 1998, when I was in primary 6. So in all these years, there were no textbooks. Teachers developed teaching materials from their previous lessons that they attained during the missionary schools. Teachers develop what to teach to the pupils through assistance of the PAYAM education administration. It wasn't easy, actually. But then all we want as children were to have a sense of, building our future from nothing. We were not paying school fees, but that doesn't mean that the education system by then was completely free. Our parents would cultivate in the teachers' farms every 3 days of the week. This was the school fees that they were contributing towards our education. Once we were able to cultivate in 1996, we cultivated 3 times in the teachers' gardens, 2 of which on Mondays and Wednesdays are a contribution to the school fees that we were supposed to pay. And on Fridays is the students' contribution to the teachers' strength. So we largely had 2 days to fully spend in the school system. This was very challenging, especially to parents who have 2 to 3 children in school. And it was also challenging for us, the pupils, who had no option of risking joining the military or just sticking with the education, to safeguard our lives from becoming child soldiers. In 1998, I left Clarima and joined Umbashi Primary School, a distance of 3 miles again from Kejiko. I had to walk all my way to the school every day, and the same situation. All the school fees that we were paying were not in cash, but we were working in the farms of the teachers every 3 days of the week. That's Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And specifically on Fridays, we would spend the whole day in the gardens, which means we literally have few hours for classrooms on Fridays. So after working for about 2, 3, or 4 hours on Fridays, instead of going to school, we would just turn ourselves and go back home, to recuperate from the hard labor. And this was how resilient the need for education in the liberated areas were. But still, with all this lack of materials, the SPLA administration in the liberated areas in the early 90s had no proper coordination of running a well-structured education system. But then the education system was kept as a policy that prevents the Arabic system into the south, especially into the liberated areas. We were not taught Arabic language. Most of our lessons are in English, and all the materials that the teachers were accessing were all in English. So the use of Arabic language was abolished completely, and we largely learned in English. This was one of the strategies during the civil wars in the Sudan. So in 1999, we set for our regional examination under the Greater Yei region, which included Meridi. And by then, the best performing students would go to Botala Secondary School in Meridi, where they would be catered for by AMREF and the other partners that were helping the education system in the liberated areas. So in 1999, we set for our regional examination, and our school emerged the best all over region, all over the region, with the three of us leading in the regional examination. Isaac Alafi, who was the highest in the region. I followed him, and there were two of our colleagues by then also, who were all from the same school. What I would remember best was that sometimes I would go, as I go to school, I would cry on the way, looking at the distances that I had to cover every single day, looking at the perseverances of surviving in a war-torn region with literally no access to anything but dependence on nature. Our lives were in the mercy of nature. We lived a life in the hands of God. After 1999, when I finished primary school, then I joined Umbasi Secondary School for my secondary education. But we were still digging, and there was no sign of any assistance. It was only in 2000, that the challenge became worse on me, as my father became powerless and could not work in the teacher's garden. One best thing I could remember was taking a live goat to the school as school fees, and I had to work for 4 consecutive days in one of the teachers' gardens to complete part uh, of the demand for that term. All in all, the year ended well, and I was promoted to senior 2. This was when one of my uncles decided to come in and ask me to go to Uganda to continue my studies. So generally, from 1992 to 2000, this was a period that most of our friends, our brothers, were conscripted into the army, or some of them joined purposely by themselves. A close friend of mine joined the army in 1996. When he was very young, just because life by then seemed hopeless. But I learned that patience always pays. I was conscripted twice, but with the help of my father, I was released. And this was the purpose why I think we need to know what happens during conflict. And how most of the education systems operate. Up to now, South Sudan has not gotten rid of all the under trees classrooms. Not because it's poor, because the administration, the present administration of South Sudan, has not innovated a fresh education system that's purely for South Sudanese. We are still dependent on the previous textbooks, informations in our textbooks borrowed from many countries that are not locally based to the needs of our country. This is the first part of my education journey. I will give you shortly how my secondary education went until present. Please take the information not the picture you see.